let me invite the rest of our panel up. Natasha, or Tash Brunhuber, is a proud Jurangi. No, say it for me. Jiranganj, thank you. Wabunja Yuan woman from the far south of the coast of New South Wales. She is currently pursuing a Bachelor of Arts at the Australian National University. Very briefly, she worked in the APS, and she mentioned that yesterday, and then subsequently joined the Healing Foundation, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Healing Foundation, where she advocated for healing and justice for stolen generation survivors. She's now with Community First Development, promoting self-determination for First Nations communities. She also co-chairs the National Centre's First Nations College, and as a survivor herself, she's a passionate advocate for ensuring children grow up in safe, loving and supportive environments. Please welcome Tash. We've heard a lot about the Australian Child Maltreatment Study. We've invited Ben Matthews onto this panel. He's a professor at the School of Law at Queensland University of Technologies and adjunct professor at Johns Hopkins University. And he was a professorial fellow to the Australian Royal Commission. You might need to move down to one of the others.
Taking Leanne's seat there.
Yes, thanks, Ben. They don't need to see me, they need to see you. He was a professorial fellow to the Australian Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse, and he served on 2 World Health Organisation guideline developments on health sector responses to child maltreatment. He is the lead investigator of the Australian Child Maltreatment Study, which is the first Australian study to identify the population-wide prevalence of all 5 types of child maltreatment and their associated mental disorders and health risk behaviours across the life course. Please welcome Ben Matthews. Obviously we have Catherine and Candas. We now want to welcome Dale Tolliday. He's a New South Wales Senior Clinical Advisor for Sexual and Violent Behaviour and Senior Clinical Advisor for the Children and Young Persons Sexual Safety Program at the Sydney Children's Hospital Network. So this is the group that incorporates New Street Services and the Safeway program, which we heard a bit about yesterday. And they're the statewide services in New South Wales for children and young people aged 0 to 18 who've displayed problematic or harmful sexual behaviours. He's an honorary professor of practice with the Faculty of Arts, Social Sciences and Humanities at the University of Wollongong. Dale's a member of the Australian Association of Social Workers and a founding member and past president of the Australian New Zealand Association for the Treatment of Sexual Abuse. Welcome, Dale. Thank you for making time. Finally, can I welcome Luke Twyford? There he is. Great. Joined the Queensland. Now tell me what the QFCC stands for.
Queensland Family and Child Commission.
Queensland Family and Child Commission, as the Chief Executive and Principal Commissioner in January 2022. He's an accomplished senior executive with rich experience in child and family sector. He's worked in Commonwealth, New South Wales and Northern Territory governments in areas of reform, research, evidence, integrity, audit, governance and complaints management. And prior to joining the Commission, he worked for 9 years with the Northern Territory government, leading critical reform of the child protection system and its legal frameworks. Luke is also a special advisor to the Australian Child Maltreatment Study, so you guys know each other, right? And he was the chairperson of the Child and Youth Development Research Partnership, an initiative of leading research institute, the Menzies School of Health Research, which aims to improve the health and wellbeing of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and young people. Please welcome Luke. Can you hear? Oh, thank you. Thanks. Can I just thank the AV team on all our behalf for getting us all talking and being heard, and also thank you to the Auslan interpreters likewise, so that everyone can hear. Can I start by asking you each to reflect on what you've heard this morning, noting that we're talking about the challenges of collaboration. And I'd love to start with you, Tash. The challenges of... Do you want me to come back to you?
No.
No.
I just wasn't ready for the question that was not written down in my notes.
She asked me to use the questions I'd provided previously, and now I've caught her on the hop.
Yeah, there's a lot that we can learn from the speakers that we heard from today, and even listening to the ARC model that does, probably without knowing it, implement a lot of the ways that we heal and work in our communities as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and it's coming together and having an ecosystem to be able to support not just abuse but every aspect of life from child to elder to ancestor, and that includes protecting our spirit along the way as well. What's interesting is, I mean, you can hear it as many times as you can hear it, but without funding those models, without funding the ACOs, like Catherine said, we're going to see small incremental changes in our communities. And we all have the power to, and I go into this a bit in my talking notes with the other questions, but we all have the power to make a difference, small or large, and whether that's just raising awareness within your workspace, in your workplace, with your mates, with your family, speaking at the dinner table with your children, with what safe behaviours are and what's not safe and what's not okay as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Luke, what were your reflections?
I've had multiple, and it's been a really rich conversation. I wanted to start by actually acknowledging that there are challenges, but actually celebrate that the fact we're now talking about collaboration as the challenge means we've come so far from stigma and shame and taboo to understanding childhood development and childhood harm, to understanding perpetrator motivations and behaviours. The fact that we're now talking about collaboration as our challenge, I think, is actually should be recognised as part of a journey where we've come a long way as a society and as a system. So that's my first reflection. My second is really, yes, collaboration is a challenge, and I've got multiple reasons why that is so. But to jump to the solutions, and what I saw from the ARCH model was branding collaboration as its own model, rather than trying to force government players and non-government actors and community members into a collaborative model that doesn't have a name and doesn't have a sense of being, is far more difficult in my experience.
Thank you. And that amazing diagram of all the different curves at the top of the arch thing. Sorry, speaking and moving my hand at the same time. Dale.
All three presentations, or four, spark different things, and I don't know whether I went on a tangent, but in my experience, I've been in the field about 40 plus years. I've seen this phase in small scale, and I've seen disintegration. So in the last of the presentations, when it got to talking about governance, it was really struck me because I'm very fixed around the issue of structure and not just building around persons in place. So innovation happens usually with people, developing relationships, and that might be the phase now, but something's got to be embedded structurally, so the disintegration is going to be very, very difficult to do. Yeah, so that's really the summary of where I'm sitting.
Thank you. Ben, any reflections standing out for you from this morning?
Thanks, Leanne. Yeah, I think the first one is that it's wonderful to be here in 2024, where we have a room full of people here from all sectors, government, non-government organisations, academia, clinical practice, that are talking about this. I actually moved to this city about 30 years ago. I actually used to come to this building to study and work. And 30 years ago, the environment in Australia was light years from where it is now in the context of child sexual abuse. So we have come a long way. We have made some progress. But at the same time, we're facing some intransigent challenges that were alluded to by Michaela. We have problems of political will. We are dealing with the vestiges of the way society has marginalised children and women, not just for years, for decades or centuries, but for millennia. And some of those deep structural forces we're still fighting here, similarly with colonialism. Absolutely, Catherine. So, mixed feelings, but some progress, and hopefully we can continue that progress in coming years.
Thanks, Ben. What about you guys? Down the end there, the arch people.
I was busy panicking about having to speak for a little bit, but I was absolutely listening. I think I come back to collective wisdom a lot. So a lot of what I was hearing and seeing is the parallel processes, the integration, and just that mirroring, role modelling, layering all through, bringing your whole self to the conversation. Storytelling is everything that we do, all of us together every day, and just recognising the strengths of those around us and how working together can just make so many improvements.
So why is it important, Catherine? Why is collaboration important?
Because if we don't collaborate, then a victim survivor is stuck having to pull all of those bits together. And, you know, it shouldn't be up to them. And particularly, I guess, where our systems have failed somebody, it's incumbent on our systems to be part of the healing and not to further harm. And so I think, for me, that's kind of the key part of the collaboration, is that, you know, we're the paid people in this. You know, we've got to do the work. We've got to make this. We've got to smooth the fish. It's not up to victim survivors or their parents, or a young person who might be using harmful sexual behaviours or their parents. It's not, you know, it's up to us to smooth the fish. It's up to the system to smooth the fish. And I think that without the collaboration, we're not having the conversations that we need to have. We're not building the relationships that allow us to have the tricky conversations. And I think Candas and I have talked about this a lot, is that whole kind of, like, there's a point at which you've got to have developed a strong enough relationship. The culture's got to be there that you can feel enough respect and trust and safety to actually name up the issues. And so that whole kind of, like, unless you're collaborating, unless you're in the room, unless you're really purposefully building those relationships, you'll never name up the real issues. And I'm not convinced we've still named up the real issues in the Arch model. I think we've got a long way to go.
Thank you. Thanks for your honesty. Tash, what's important to you about collaboration? So what, you know, we talk a lot about it, but why is it important?
Indigenous children are overrepresented in areas where child safety and security is compromised. Indigenous children aged 0 to 17 have higher rates of hospitalisation and deaths due to injury than non-Indigenous children. Indigenous children are more likely to be victims of child sexual abuse, neglect and assault. Indigenous children are almost 11 times more likely to be in and out of home care than non-Indigenous children. Indigenous children have the highest rate of suicide, and as of last year, it's the leading cause of death. This is why it's important for me. I've lived this. Many of my people have lived this. Colonisation has sought to destroy our ways of life and destroy our people, and the impact of colonisation still lives in our people and our communities. But there's hope. Our communities are strong and resilient. They've been working to rebuild what was once decimated by those who invaded this country. Fee spoke about yesterday how healing is happening in our communities undercover. And what that means is that healing is happening in communities usually self-funded or on a volunteer basis. The Western system does not recognise our ways of healing. The funding mechanisms don't recognise our ways of healing. Further to that, we're seen as a risk to funders and a risk to government. The risk is based on stereotypes and racism, which is a huge barrier when it comes to resourcing grassroots communities. There is no consideration for holistic healing, and there's no prioritisation for self-determination. All of us have a right over our own lives, and the systems that we work in don't allow us to achieve that. I also think from my perspective is that traditional healing initiatives can be done in the absence of Western systems just like they have been done for tens of thousands of years. We know that suicide rates among young people is lower in communities where First Peoples have greater engagement with cultural events, ceremonies and organisations, and where discrimination was less prevalent. There's evidence of this, so why aren't we supporting our communities to lead their own healing? Just like Fee said yesterday, we need those resources returned to us. Those resources have been lost from colonisation. Those resources that were stolen and continue to be stolen from us. Non-Indigenous people have benefited from and continue to benefit from colonisation. The removal of our people off our lands and the loss of our culture and the loss of our language and identity. I think once we as a society start paying what it takes and start paying the rent, we will see huge impacts to the disproportional rates of people in child protection and justice systems. When non-Indigenous people stop thinking they know what's best for us and thinking they know what heals us, then we'll see massive improvements in our communities. My takeaways for this question, for you, everyone here today and online: eradicate the power imbalance by shifting power to First Nations people. Redistribute funding so that we can lead our own solutions, our own healing, for not just ourselves, but for the future generations. Fight back against colonial systems. Be the change you want to see for your children. Return what has been stolen from us, and remember that decolonising systems doesn't just make the systems better for us, but it makes it better for all Australians.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tash. I wonder, Dale, what you make of that call to action from Tash, and having worked in the New South Wales, kind of in a more targeted way, New South Wales area, around what we can learn from the hundreds of generations, I think thousands of generations.
2,600.
Thank you, of generations of communities, First Nations communities, about healing and the place of healing, and what the dismantling of the power structures. I think you talked to, Tash. What do you make of that? What's your first response?
Look, a first response to that, if I take myself backwards in time as well, Tash, is none of this was in the framework of professional education when I was coming through. We had to learn in situ. I don't think it's in the professional training framework right now, frankly. From my personal experience, we were brought to a position of being taught to listen rather than to assume that we had the knowledge and to connect with community. So I had the privilege of connecting through an organisation in New South Wales Health called the Education Centre Against Violence, which has built an Aboriginal program. And then I was, after a period, invited in to be one of the educators going on invitation to community to provide what the communities were wanting from us, and us hearing back. So Weaving the Net's a program that then led to other programs, Strong Aboriginal Women, which I wasn't part of, but I was in the background, but Strong Aboriginal Men, and then a learning or a non-traditional pathway from those communities and others for Aboriginal people to engage and teach us, but also have a non-traditional pathway of education to come in and work together with us, so that we've now got a model of our work being that in every one of our service sites we've got Aboriginal identified positions in every service, and we resist translating those to non-Aboriginal positions. If they're vacant until we can fill them. We're not going to be moving around that. 8 ways of learning, healing framework, inputs into our service system that actually haven't been siloed for Aboriginal young people. We've been learning from those in terms of our responses for all young people. It's a work in progress for us, because what it also means for non-Indigenous or non-Aboriginal workforce is to recognise that we've benefited from what's been taken and are benefiting on a day-to-day basis, and we need to find a place where we can connect and be effective, but also have humility about the work and humility about the welcoming, which is astonishing when you think about it, of communities for us to join and work with those communities. So I don't know if I'm being terribly tight with my response, but it's been one of the greatest parts of the development of the services I've been privileged to be part of, to be doing this work, to be seeing growth and development on a self-determined basis, rather than a basis of, of just another version of colonisation.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you for tackling that, and I appreciate it. I'm wondering, Luke, if after working in around different parts of Australia and different jurisdictions, you have some reflections, particularly targeted at the idea of what gets in the way of collaboration.
Yeah, great question. And it almost touches on why is collaboration important, your question to Tash. So I think as governments, we build systems that are deliberately dehumanising, and we take humans and we put them into public service roles, and we ask them to put aside their emotions and put aside their lived experience, and here's your job description and here's your procedure manual, and of course use your professional judgment that you've been trained on, but this is your role and these are the boundaries of your role. And then it's those people that go out and try to make a positive difference in people's lives. And they are all good people. And my vast experience of frontline workers everywhere, non-government and public sector, is that they do that job not for money or fame, but because they are driven to make a positive difference. So how can it be that thousands of good-willed people employed by the state end up making little difference or having a harmful impact on our children and families? And that's been the great conundrum of me trying to work out what needs to change and shift. I think the reason collaboration is important is it fills the gaps between the roles. When you have a homeless young person, I'll change the word homeless. When I have a young person in state care who has chosen to live in a park rather than their approved placement, who has a history of profound trauma, wants to engage in mental health services, but the file that I read is days and weeks of arguments between child safety and the mental health service as to who will pick the person up from the park, because it's neither of their roles and they're not funded to do it. To me, that is the antithesis of what we're all trying to achieve. And if those multiple workers and their team leaders and their executives had a collaborative approach, it wouldn't be a question. How about we go provide the service in the park? And so ultimately, I rail against the strictness of the role boundaries we put on people, on portfolios and on systems, because it is completely dehumanising to the human that needs their government to meet all their needs.
Do you have ideas about how we could affect this issue, like right down to the individual in the park?
If you could just sort that out for us, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Leanne. Look, I think at its best, optimal collaboration has to be informed both at the systemic level and the policy level and the individual practitioner level, for example, by both awareness of the entire context, so it needs really informed, well-educated, well-trained people, and not just the practitioners, to emphasise again, policymakers, policy leaders, right to the very top. Because they're the ones that create the systems. Yeah. So as well as awareness, the second key attribute is empathy, and that's empathy for all kids, okay, kids who may in future experience sexual abuse, but it's empathy for each individual kid, and each individual kid who's experienced this has had any one of a number of different types of experiences, and they need different responses to meet their individual wants and needs. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. And only proceeding from that awareness and empathy at all those levels can we have the type of collaboration that can produce the responses to each individual child and to children and youth as a whole group that can help take us further. And I think I think Dale mentioned, we still may be lacking a little bit in practitioner education and training. That's something that we should be able to fix. I think the harder problem is fixing things at the higher policy level for some of the fundamental structural and historic reasons and political reasons we've mentioned before. But we can do better.
I feel like the biggest indictment on our system sometimes is that we have to fund navigators to help people navigate the system. Like, just get the systems right. Catherine and Candas, what is different about Arch? And, you know, echoing the reminder that Catherine Little provided to us this morning about the historical gift that is the echoes in Australia. What's unique about Arch that is an example of excellence in this space? So far.
Yeah, look, we're obviously right in the thick of change, but the anecdote that jumped to mind when we were talking about the young person in the park, and someone just needs to do it, and we know that, and we care, and no one's turning up to these jobs without that driver. And the Family Violence Counselling Support Service worker who is able to have a lot of relationships with various non-government providers was organising to have some vouchers prepared for somebody who was in a quite rural location but had no capacity to deliver, and it was a need today and wasn't able to do that. It wasn't an option with the schedule, even transport access, etc., lots of workplace-based issues. However, the police officers within Arch needed to also have a discussion with that person to go out and support and see if they would need anything. They were able to take that along. And even the notion of the person receiving that and having a very tonally different conversation, I hope, I didn't witness it, is exceptionally important because it's about that holistic well-being and response, and not just doing your piece of the pie, if we want to, you know, go back to yesterday's anecdote.
I think the thing for me, I guess, that I feel is the biggest difference is that we're having police say, we believe you. Like, we might not be able to follow through on this because it's been a long time, the evidence is scant, but we believe you. And that, just the power of the conversations that led to the police feeling comfortable to do that it wasn't going to, I don't know, whatever potential consequences people were worried about. And I guess the power that has for victim survivors in, you know, it's not just the sexual violence service counsellor that believes me, because, I mean, that's great that we do. But, you know, we've got that on the door. You know, we're a sexual assault service. So, you know, we should be getting that right. But I think to have police do it, and I think in many cases, you know, to have a male police officer doing it, for some of our victim survivors that have been harmed by, you know, where the majority of people are harmed by men, I think just those really little things that, I feel like that's what we're getting right, is just something as simple as that.
It feels simple, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's really not.
But Dale pointed out the governance requirements around making it happen, and I guess that's the thing I was going to ask Tash. We had a question in our group around, you know, if it is so important, who's responsible for making it happen? Who's responsible, Tash?
We all have a role to play in making collaboration across systems happen. And, you know, from our conversations yesterday, showing the majority of people who were surveyed in the community attitudes survey, majority of people don't feel like it's their responsibility to take child sexual abuse seriously or act on it. And this kind of made me reflect, and I'm sure all of us had a reaction to it, like, why not? Like, why isn't it all of our responsibility as adults to protect children, but also protect adult survivors? Because we're on a long journey of healing ourselves and we don't have the right answers. And you know, it's taken me a long journey to be able to sit here with you all, to be able to speak. And you know, that's why I write notes, because I have memory loss issues because of the trauma that I've received. And when you're met with systems that question you, and you know, make comments like, "Oh my God, I don't know how you get out of bed every day after facing such trauma," you leave and you don't go back. And you can't go back because it's just re-traumatizing, re-triggering, telling our stories over and over again and disclosing our stories over and over again to people who don't understand it, and don't understand First Peoples, don't understand our way of healing, our cultural values, don't respect it, and don't hold it up at the same value as Western ways of healing. And I think we're going to keep seeing that cycle happen over and over again until that happens, because our children and our adult survivors won't access these systems that were not built for them, that weren't created by them, and they're not safe.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all of our responsibility in this room, online, and in our families. It's our responsibility to teach those people in our communities as well.
Thank you, Tash. Now, I'm, having that chair dilemma. You know the chair dilemma, where the time frame's gone crazy and there is so much brilliance up here, and there is probably lots of questions in the audience, and we have one more piece of business to do before lunch. So, sharing in my dilemma, I would just like to invite, if anyone would like to ask a question directly to the panel, please. Yep, please do, and perhaps direct your question to a particular person.
Hello.
Oh, thank you.
Firstly, the statistics of number of people that are in the community over the age of 18 that have been sexually abused in some way, 28%, is that kind of right? So we're kind of talking up 28, 30%. So we're talking like 6 million people.
I think, Ben, this is one for you.
One for Ben?
Not quite, but do you want to finish your question? Yeah.
With 8,000 odd people on the sex offender list across Australia, and obviously the judicial system and mandatory reporting and things like that, are we not missing? I mean, I know at least 400 people, girls, that have been sexually abused from young ages, that don't report, and it's all within family and friends. Are we missing the fact that it is a whole of community problem, not just a government or structure, or it's like it's happening everywhere, and it's the, I think I talked to Kathy yesterday, it's the collective denial. Does anyone disagree that that's where we're at? And like what I've heard about the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander healing process, the model works. It's worked for 50,000 years. And we've got structures, yes, that are colonial, whatever we want to call it. They come in and it's like, it's not working, guys. Why not take some of the leadership of models that have been there and just roll that out, wipe everything else out? Why aren't our laws across the country, 17 in Tasmania? Why is that? Okay, maybe it's a 16 elsewhere. If you break into a home in WA, the law that was written in 1913 basically says that, well, you get 75% of the penalty if you actually sexually abuse a person there. What the fuck?
Thank you.
I don't know. I
Thank
don't know
you.
whether there was a
Ben,
question about that.
Thank you. Ben, I just might ask you to respond to the theme in that, which I, thank you for the passion and for articulating a concern about what we can't see, Yeah, sure, and the lack of sharing in the community, turning away from this. Ben, did you get a sense of that through your study?
Yeah, look, child sexual abuse has always been a hidden phenomenon, and Australia is no different in that respect. What we do see, and just to let you know, what we found in the study is of all Australians aged 16 and over, the prevalence of child sexual abuse was 28.5%. For those aged 16 to 24, it was 25.7%. We've got, so that is kind of a reflection of the current situation, but I'll just add a couple of bits of nuance to that. Not all child sexual abuse is the same type. So we've got, a certain proportion of people who might experience one isolated incident. It might be by another adolescent, a drunken incident at a party, for example. I'm not minimising that. I'm just saying, okay, that's one type of situation closer to one end of the spectrum. At the other end of the spectrum, you might have a much younger child who experiences repeated rape by a family member. Okay, very different types of situation, calling for different responses, but still types of sexual abuse. Now, what we also found is when we compared prevalence by age groups, we found some declines over time in Australian society. So there has been declines, especially by some classes of perpetrator, and in some really good news, declines by parent and adult family members, and declines by institutional adult caregivers, people like teachers, clergy, sports coaches, etc., which is great news. So there's less of that happening in the community now, partly as a result of many things that we've done at the policy and practice level. But also we have seen an increase in peer-on-peer sexually abusive behaviour. Now, to go to your point about it being hidden, a lot of sexual abuse in the past in particular has been hidden, so people have not disclosed. We've actually got some new work just being published shortly about disclosure rates for child sexual abuse. And, over half of people have never told anyone anything about their experience. Anything. Which shows you just how severe an experience it is and helps to explain the trauma that can be involved. But what we also found, and this is really encouraging, some more good news, and again, is a product of the work that everyone in this room does on a daily basis at the policy level, clinical level, the programmatic level, is that when we looked at disclosure rates by people aged 16 to 24, far more of them who had experienced sexual abuse had told someone. About 70% had told someone, compared with about 45% of those aged 45 and over. That's a huge change in Australian society. That's a really positive development. And having said that, not everyone wants or needs to disclose, but disclosure generally, especially for more serious cases, is generally a good thing. So we have made some progress there. There's still obviously more to be done in terms of encouraging people to get help, obviously in prevention as well. That's the gold standard of what we want. But in terms of educating the public and having public awareness as well, still a little bit more to do there, as shown by other surveys as well.
And I think that, I guess the other issue is, we're going to have to move on, I'm sorry, but I guess the other issue that we're looking forward to speaking about this afternoon after lunch is about living with trauma as an adult victim and survivor, and some of that, the fragmentation that we've been addressing by not really addressing it through collaboration is a feature both for children but also for adults, obviously, who are living with a history of child sexual abuse. I can take one more question, and I thought I saw one up here. No? No.
There's one here.
Oh, sir, thank you. Thanks, Alex.
It'll be just a quick question in regards, I think it was actually Ben again, sorry. I know you were talking about collaboration, generally speaking, and the need for some of the therapists to be better educated and that more expanding. But then you went on to talk about policy as well. My experience is we need collaboration, but it's a two-edged sword when we're talking about policy and funding, in that sometimes the sexual violence funding gets wrapped into domestic violence and it loses its importance. Sexual violence is, as you said earlier, there's many nuances. It's not just with domestic violence and that arena. So I'm wondering, is there a thought within the policymakers to make that more obvious, but not lose the funding and not lose the collaboration, if that makes sense?
That's a really good question, but I actually think there's probably others on the panel better placed to respond to that than me.
Is there someone else? Luke, did you want to respond to that?
No, I completely agree. And it goes to that dehumanising. We create a bucket, and then that's what the bucket's for, and we forget that what flows over the bucket is where the harm and the opportunities are. And creating a minister for this means that they create programs for this, and their workforce is focused on this. And we can't have a minister for everything across the board, so it comes back to that collaboration. If I could just touch on something we were discussing a bit earlier, for me, the trick in the governance for creating collaboration, particularly around funding decision-making, is how do you share responsibility, increase the sharing of responsibility, and decrease control. So me, as the holder of the money, the Treasury Department, I want to, of course, collaborate. Of course, I'll share responsibility, but I'm still going to control the money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the real tension of collaboration without the reduction of control is not going to lead to a better world. But equally, how do you share responsibility without diluting accountability? I am the Treasury Department. I am accountable for getting good outcomes for the money. Through my collaboration, I'll ensure that those outcomes are improved. So increasing shared responsibility, decreasing control, and maintaining accountability is the magic recipe. If anyone can solve that across the board,
I'm going to ask Dale, what are your thoughts about this one?
Well, I know people are getting hungry, but I think Treasury or the funders need to be sure they're getting value for bang for buck, and it's landing in the right way. So there needs to be continuous evaluation about what's being developed. Now that needs to be a collaborative, engaged process. It can't be over the top. And I think that's the best solution, so that the evaluation of the effectiveness of services needs to always include the consumers and the broader society, but also not just be defined by the parameters of, say, a policy unit somewhere. But I think being funded is quite an interesting process at the moment, because we've got a lot of irresponsible funding by government. For me, irresponsible funding is to fund or outsource significant programs without providing support and framework for that delivery, and to leave people vulnerable. And typically that funding pitches non-government organisations in competition with each other, which doesn't help collaboration at all. That's especially evident for me in out-of-home care. And the funding tends to be for short cycles, which means people who are going to engage and work there. I'm subject to this with my services, where I've lost fabulous staff because they can't get finance for their home in a temporary position. So they've got all these wheels turning that are creating problems for us with workforce. And some of the temporary funding that my service have got, we're now into year 15. I mean, surely we've produced evidence for that funding to be consolidated. So it's a really tricky position. I understand the need to have bang for buck, though.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask Tash to wrap us up.
Yeah,
on
okay.
this panel.
I was going to ask you if I could wrap up anyway, because my ancestors sent me here for thousands of miles away, so I have a lot to say. There are many barriers for young and older Aboriginal victims like myself being able to report to authorities and speaking with specialists such as cause fear of repercussion for them, their communities. What we can do, like practical takeaways that we can all embed in our day-to-day lives, is ensuring our workplaces implement anti-racism policies, making sure our own staff are trained and are the right for the role, and if they're not, get rid of them. Listen, hear, believe, use basic language. Some of our mob, English is their 5th language. Think about how your work, how your role impacts the lives of survivors. Don't let funding get in the way of collaboration. It's just another barrier we're letting keep us from doing the good work. Support First Nations communities to be leaders of their future. Work with us, not for us. Do no harm. If you're in a position where you're speaking to victims and survivors, where they're disclosing, ensure you have a culturally safe and responsive space, and ensure you're accessible. That's one of the biggest barriers for our community's accessibility. Sorry, mumbling my words. And I wrote a call to action this morning. Excellent. Because I asked that question yesterday, what was your call of action? And I got a response that I didn't like too much. So my call of action, we must act as if every child's safety is in our hands. This is the minimum standard for everyone, for systems and for governments. And I will continue to hold myself accountable, because when I close my eyes, I can see that little girl, she's just 5 years old, sitting in the grass crying and wanting to die, because that is the only way she knew to end her pain. I see the young adult who was so impacted by her trauma that she reached out to a system that only caused further harm, and questioned me, like I said before, how do you even get out of bed? And I see me now, a person who has finally begun to heal, because I've taken it into my own hands. I've begun to heal through culture, through my elders and through my ancestors. I owe it to her to keep going, even on days when I don't have the energy or the emotional capacity. I owe it to her. I owe it to all the children in this room and online who were harmed. I owe it to this little boy, Eli, his little brother, Colby, to my other nieces and nephews, and to the children in all of our communities. Although there's limited funding and resources, there are small pockets of healing happening off the backs of our elders and our cultural leaders and healers. We as a system need to recognise just how important cultural healing is, and support these practices to thrive, so that our children and families and community can thrive for generations.
Thank you. Thank you, folks, and thank you, Tash. And please join me in thanking you. Stay here. Please join me in thanking Catherine, Candas, Ben, Dale, and Luke for their input. We thank you, and you guys can step down, but I'm keeping Tash up here and inviting Malika, Kathy, and Robbie to come forward to join to come onto the stage.
Hello.
Robbie. So this is the team that is just going to launch the annual report of the National Centre, and we're going to do it in record time so you can get to lunch. But we also really we want to ensure that we honour the work that's gone on over the last year, and the way that we're going to do that is that Malika is going to chair, and I'll hand over to her.
I'm just calling up your run sheet.
Oh, the run sheet. Malika, can I just say, is one of the valued members of our Survival-led Adult College. She's been with the college since the beginning, and she has somehow gained the place as the MC of our annual report from last year and now this year. So she's kind of got a special role. Over to you.
Thanks, Leanne. Yep. Hello, everybody. My name's Malika Elizabeth Enshala Reese. I was born in America to a black mother, Indigenous, Choctaw, Creek, and Welsh and German father. When I was born, I said on my birth certificate race, and my parents said human. And they said that would be illegal, so I'm black. And yes, I'm a survivor. I'm the first person to have the name suppression order dropped in a CSA case. In Australia, I can only thank my dead grandmother, my angel grandmother, who came to Australia when I was 13. She knew I was being abused by my stepfather, and she sold her house and left her friends and family just to come and be by my side. She couldn't protect me, but she could give me unconditional love. And it has been an honour to be part of the inaugural college members of the National Centre for Action Against Child Sexual Abuse, because we all want to make a change. We are here for change, and as I keep banging on, we need to hear for change. We need to sit and listen to the uncomfortable conversations so that people can disclose and feel safe and feel heard and be seen. So it was an honour last year to be the MC and to present all the voices that we had. Tash, may I ask you to do an acknowledgement, a welcome.
An acknowledgement.
An acknowledgement.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Walawani Nindiwa Naiga Natasha Brunhuber Jungan Jwabanja Yuan. What that roughly translates to is I hope you have all had a safe journey here, and I hope you all have a safe journey home. My name's Natasha Brunhuber. I'm a Jurungan Jwabanja Yuan woman from the far east south coast of New South Wales. If any of you know New South Wales, Bateman's Bay South, Yuan country, it's a huge country down that way. Represent. An acknowledgement, yeah. I was on a staff gathering last week, not last year, and I talked about the importance of an acknowledgement, and we've heard why it's important to acknowledge the country that we're on. We're also acknowledging the spirits and the ancestors that are on this country that have given their life for us to be here and for us to take space and for us to speak on their behalf. And I thank the Yagara and Turrbal people for allowing us to do that, and we're speaking about such hard things this week. And we're feeling much harder things in silence. Someone said yesterday that adults are listened to and children are not. In my reality, my people aren't listened to, and that's all. That's it, full stop. So to have the privilege to speak here today, representing my community back home, I've been given license to speak and share my story, share theirs, so that we can come together and have a better future for all Australians. When an acknowledgement is done, you are bringing your ancestors with you and your spirit, and the ancestors of this country are taking care of you while you're here. They're taking care of your spirit and holding you and guiding you, making sure that when you go home, you're okay, but also making sure that we're not bringing any nasties to their country either. So I want you to think about that when you go home and how special that is to be held by our ancestors, even though you're not Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, but for a moment they held you and guided you and made sure that you were safe on their country. And when you go back home, it's the same thing, because this is all Aboriginal land. Thank you.
Next, I would like to welcome up another inaugural member of the college, Robbie Gambley. So I'll tap danced.
speech book. Thank you, Malika. Thank you, Tash. Hello, folks. My name is Robbie Gambley. I'm an original member of the Survivor-led Adult College. I am highly honoured to speak here today. It was a gift to meet Amy and Emma yesterday, two amazing people. I live in Casino on the spectacular northern rivers of New South Wales, close to our beaches and the bush, Bunjalung country. I grew up around a village called Benalbo, an Aboriginal word which means bloodwood, or the meeting of the bloodwoods, a beautiful Australian hardwood timber. I love the word Benalbo. Benalbo, Old Benalbo, Bottle Creek and Haystack Mountain is an area I love. It is part of me. It is where I grew up on my father's cattle properties, with our horses, dogs and cattle. I was happy. My perpetrator was a science school teacher at Benalbo Central School. And that was back in the 70s, a long time ago. That was back in the days when caning was still allowed in school. Tragically, I had my wondrous young life stolen from me. I was sexually, physically and psychologically assaulted. He also taunted me about my sister. Like many survivors of childhood sexual abuse, this almost destroyed me, almost cost me my life with shame, anger and disgust in myself. I did not like or care for myself. I lived a reckless life and I hurt my back working as a stockman west of Moree, New South Wales, near Weemallah and Mungandai. I was only 20 years old. It took me 24 long years of drinking, motorbikes, abusing drugs, until I told a wonderful social worker I was comfortable with and trusted. This amazingly clever lady, no doubt, saved my life. After I'd worked with my social worker for some time, Stephanie said, "I think you could start talking with other men." "No," was my very stern reply. I felt sick at the thought of telling other men. The shame of it was crippling. Stephanie was a highly skilled social worker. We talked and worked at Community Health, Casino Memorial Hospital. Finally, I agreed to attend a group in Lismore. The first group was a session on grief. My beloved father, Stephen, had died in 2002. We were very close, working side by side on magnificent Haystack Mountain, riding our splendid great stock horses in the heat and the sleet. My father tried to warn me in his way about the evil perpetrator. It has haunted me all my life that I did not listen to my father's wise words. This shows the evil and clever skill perpetrators use when they're grooming, which all you people know and which is what we have to stop. In the tea break of the group, I told one of the male facilitators that I had been abused, assaulted. He was the first man to say to me, "You know, Robbie, it was not your fault. You were not to blame." Such powerful words to hear. For 24 years, I lived with my dirty, dark secret that I had done something wrong. That was a lonely, damaging, dreadful 24 years. I first went to the police in 1997, but I was a mess and my dear father was very ill. I nursed Dad to the end. I went back and worked very hard with the New South Wales dedicated detectives in 2005, 2006. The perpetrator pleaded guilty and was sent to prison, but not for long enough, but I got him. Thank you, that means a lot, thank you. I told my very supportive court social worker, Sharon, from Indigo House, Richmond Sexual Assault Unit, I want to help people. I want to do a story in the Northern Star, the local newspaper. Sharon helped me. I did the story. I was on the front page. I was very frightened then. Since then, I've continued speaking out in the media, ABC North Coast, and writing to politicians, state and federal, and also doing our important work with the National Centre to tell people about the horrors of child sexual abuse. I don't want survivors, whom I call brave people, because they are brave people, to suffer in silence now. I don't want children to feel unsafe and live in sadness now. This is why myself and other very courageous survivors of child sexual abuse speak out now to help people and work to protect what I call precious children, because children are very precious. So today and every day, I acknowledge and pay tribute to the incredible tenacity and bravery of survivors, brave people. And I say to people, please do not suffer in silence. Please, please tell someone you feel comfortable with and trust, and lift that insidious burden of the abuse away from you, and work to start a new, better, healthier and happier life. You can do that. Also, Australia, please do not forget that some wonderful young people did not make it through their own horror and are no longer with us. Let us always remember them. I want the reality to be here in this room and with the researchers. I want to speak about a friend I lost. Brett was a very fine young man. We both lived in Benalbo. Brett was the postmaster's son. We drank together in casino. Tragically, my friend took his life. Brett shot himself. Brett had been abused by the Anglican priest. How I wish we could have talked. But I was too ashamed, as was Brett. This was in the 1980s. This is the abhorrent reality of the cruelty and evilness of child sexual abuse that has to be stopped. My best wishes to you.
Thank you, Robbie. Yeah. I've been speaking out about this in my own experiences for the last 6 to 8 years, and one of the biggest things I like to say is set down the shame and set yourselves up, because it's that shame that is so crippling and it's not our shame to carry. Anyway, next we're going to watch a video which highlights from our inaugural annual report launch last year in Canberra. Welcome to this wonderful event. We are all here acknowledging everybody's right to healing and recovery and protection. We are here unequivocally protecting and healing us all.
My childhood was stolen from me, but I have learnt to survive, and I refuse to let the actions of others take any more from me.
Half of all sexual assaults committed in Australia are committed against a child. And people are really shocked by that, even people that likely are in contact with survivors every day.
I think I'm here because I'm done letting shame control my life.
For 50 odd years, I lived in darkness, hidden away in my cave and surrounded by so much shame, guilt, anxiety and deep depression, fear, anger and rage.
What makes me nervous when I speak about something like this is how angry I feel. I feel so angry, and I think we can use that anger and we can allow it to drive us to be a part of the multinational, multi-generational effort that's required to make change.
If we can become a more attuned society, then it makes conversations more likely to happen in a safe enough way, and so that healing can happen in a much faster way.
All these emotions and feelings creating an unsafe place for me. All that changed several years ago when I discovered my purpose.
every one of us who is here, every single one of us has potential to create positive change in everybody's lives.
I'm proud and privileged to be in the position I am in my life, to be able to share my story and finally begin my journey of healing.
Please be understanding and supportive of victims of sexual assault and abuse and domestic violence. Please listen without judgment, listen with love and care.
A lot of people don't know what to do. For me, it took me quite a few years to find my voice. But if I want to bring about change, I've got to get into the game. So this is what I do now. It's about using that lived and living experience to get into the game, to increase the awareness, but to try and start that catalyst for change.
Each and every single one of us standing up here has the skill set and the qualifications and the lived experience. And we need to be reminded of that. We need to remind ourselves of that and stand in that.
Many of us represent different nations and different regions, so we really thank the National Centre for giving us that opportunity to speak.
I'm here to make positive change. I'm here to help bring awareness. I'm here to help others to thrive and heal. So here and here for change.
So if I ever tell you about my past, it's not because I want your sympathy or to feel sorry for me, but so you can understand why I am and who I am. It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. Thank you.
That was so special. And obviously Robbie and I have a deep commitment to our outfits. Okay, I would like to welcome up the co-chair for the National Centre, Kathy Kesselman.
Thanks, Malika, and thanks obviously to Robbie in particular, to Tash. I feel very inadequate to follow all of you. As the chair, it's fairly traditional to read the annual report at this point, and I won't do that to you. I'm going to give you a gift. I've sat through too many chair deliveries of annual reports, but obviously the achievements of the National Centre over the last year speak for themselves. So please, have a look at that, and I know Leanne, as the outgoing CEO, is going to be, talking much more to that now. But I'd just like to acknowledge just the remarkable people that I've had the privilege of working with and meeting, and just how passionate this room is. Just the absolute buzz of us together. We talk about collaboration, but what's more collaborative than us all here in this space being so real and so honest? And if anyone can make real change, I think we all can together. So acknowledgement to all of the advisory groups and the panels and all of the structures and everyone who's contributed to what we've achieved this last year, and obviously to what we've achieved over the last 2 days. Particular acknowledgement to Leanne, her executive team, the staff. It's a remarkable organisation, 3 years old, and we're already moving mountains. There's a lot more mountains to move, but I think we can do it all together. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I first talked with Kathy in 2010 when I had my abuser prosecuted, and I said, "What can I do to help spread the word?" She said, "Tell your story to That's Life." No, I got it. It's because it's like, to spread the word and let people know that these stories are out there and that there can be positive outcomes and that we are not just survivors, but we thrive. So on that note, I'd like to pass over to Leanne.
Thank you. We do have a video that just brings together the achievements of the last year, and I'll play that in a moment. So I'm not going to talk through as in a normal annual report, except to say that, a startup company, which is what the National Centre is only really possible to get to where we've got to because of the collaborative efforts and because of the partnerships and because of people leaning in to engage with us and challenge us. and encourage us and support us. And that has been a standout of my 2 years at the National Centre. So, you know, we are, as you've heard, committed to keeping the knowledges of victims and survivors integral to the work and the approach, and to shaping our strategies and ensuring that our efforts are both authentic and impactful. And we're focused on growing that community of victims and survivors so people feel connected and that you belong and that there is somewhere to belong. So we're travelling the road together to make this dream happen, and we know it's rocky and challenging along the way for everyone, but it's an endeavour worth pursuing, and the team is deeply committed to growing and learning and changing the conversation together. You know that we have launched research in our community attitude study, some research in harmful sexual behaviours. We're launching our learning management system, which will hereby not be called a learning management system. It is called the Change Academy, and there's information about it in your tote bag. We will be using the Change Academy to establish a range of knowledge resources that people can access for training and development. We are really proud of the work that our team has done in relation to the Northern Territory project, which is a project that has been moving towards the development of Aboriginal-led healing services in remote communities for under 18s who've experienced child sexual abuse. And you should stay tuned, because that work has been growing slowly and with great reference to the local community. There were submissions to government. For those interested in such things, there's some information on our financial position in the report. I can see you all going to that now. And the more detailed audited financials will be on the website. The summary is that we're travelling well, and the resources to meet the next phase of our action plan are there and are adequate, and getting going under the Here for Change action plan. On behalf of the whole team at the National Centre, I want to thank the broad range of expert advisors, partners, collaborators and funders who've joined us on the journey of building our organisation and our impact. We're on the verge of a new set of expanded partnerships, and this will just keep growing. Importantly, I would like to acknowledge our colleagues and funders at the Department of Social Services and our colleagues at the National Office for Child Safety. It's through these partnerships that together we can make change. Now this becomes personal. At the heart of our work is the relationship with victim and survivor community, and I would like to particularly acknowledge the survivor-led adult college members, and especially those that are here today and online. I would also like to thank the First Nations College, many of whom are with us here today. I am so grateful for your warmth and your feedback and your encouragement that I've received, when really it's me who's benefited so much from our connection, filled with your strength and spirit and determination. Thank you so much. I would like to acknowledge, and this is, my tears are because tomorrow is my last day. I would like to acknowledge the board of the National Centre and their strategic leadership of an enormous agenda, and for navigating the complexities of our mission. I wish them all the very best as they find a new CEO and work together to keep kicking goals and growing the impact and strength of the National Centre. I would like to acknowledge founding chair Joe Tucci and the new chair Kathy. These roles are not easy and they carry enormous responsibility, and I pay tribute to them both for their strength, leadership and courage. Finally, I would ask for your patience while I personally thank the National Centre team for their work and their diligence and their commitment. It's small, it's less than 20 people, but mighty. And even when the tasks and obstacles feel overwhelming, they have an amazing capacity to keep going, to find new solutions, to back each other up, to lean into the complexity and to test new solutions. It has been an absolute honour and privilege to lead this team, and I will miss them. I want to especially pay tribute to the executive team, Scott, Alyssa and Andrea, and thank them for their leadership work at the National Centre. The National Centre is very fortunate to have each of them. I will miss you. You've got this. Thank you.
Okay, now we are going to watch a video, a 2-minute summary of the past year and all of the achievements of the National Centre.
The National Centre is proud to incorporate insights from those with lived experience of child sexual abuse.
My childhood was stolen from me, and I refuse to let the actions of others take any more from me.
In the last year, we continued our commitment to reshaping conversations, influencing policy to enhance victim support and promote trauma-informed responses. Senior staff participated as speakers and panellists at various conferences and high-profile events. We made a number of formal submissions to government inquiries related to child sexual abuse and victim needs. Leveraging diverse knowledge sources is vital for creating a safer world for children. The National Centre encompasses 5 key sources: lived experience, cultural knowledge, research, practice knowledge, and procedural knowledge. This year, we published our theory of change, detailing our strategy for integrating these insights. We launched 18 research projects, including the Australian Child Sexual Abuse Attitudes, Knowledge and Response Study, and established a register of active projects nationwide. We completed the Harmful Sexual Behaviours and Community Attitude Studies and launched the Reshaping the Conversation Delphi study. We conducted 22 learning activities for 6,165 participants and published 31 knowledge resources. We also developed a learning management system to enhance knowledge sharing. NT Health has funded the National Centre to develop an Aboriginal-led response to child sexual assault through regional pilot programs, aligning with the Family, Domestic and Sexual Violence Action Plan 2. Raising awareness and reducing stigma have been pivotal to the National Centre's communication strategy, a symbol of hope and an essential vehicle for victims and survivors.
So what fabulous work. So thank you all for sitting and listening to our second annual report. I would like to say, what a goodly thing if the children of the world could live in safety and peace. But I wouldn't be me if I said it. I have to sing it. What a goodly thing if the children of the world could live in safety and in peace. I really wanted to sing the Pope song by Tim Minchin, but you'll just have to Google that. So now it's lunch, and what time are we back?
1.
And we're back at 1. See you soon.